Hello and welcome to our first episode of 2023 for the JRB podcast with myself, Ryan Levine, joined here with Jeff Jones and Bowden Tamnick.
Hey.
W- Hello.
And
Bowden and I both feel like crap.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, don't we all? And today we're going to talk about amazing defenders for probably like not very long. There's not that much to talk about. And then we're going to kind of transition into like talking
Rants.
about once again this format we're in and what it means and what needs to happen, and then hopefully we can talk a little bit about Photon Hypernova, which is coming out in 2 weeks now, 3 weeks now. I think the sneak peek is in 2 weeks, so very very soon. But the first thing I guess to talk about is like I have not heard a single person talk about this set at all. Like it's like baffling.
I honestly
I've
didn't realize it came out today until Konami on Facebook was like, "Hey, it's out. You can go get it at local." So I was like, "What? Really? Okay, I guess."
yeah,
This this was a set where I only paid attention to the reprints and nothing else. And the reprints were, well, good, quote unquote. Still just completely unnecessary given the current format.
yeah, like so it has three archetypes, just like all of these deck building sets have. Rescue Ace, Pearly, and Mikanko. And they're just like I guess one could argue that saying they're all not very good is like kind of irrelevant because we're in a format where
It's
I don't
impossible for like another deck
yeah.
to come out to be good.
I mean,
If something else came out and it was good, I would have been like, "Holy shit! How
yeah.
did that happen?"
Yeah, I would have probably been more upset if one of these decks was like, "Yeah, this will beat Tier Elements." Like, probably not, but
It's a
that
deck
would
of
be
like 30 dimensional shifters or something.
literally. But I guess to give like a very very brief overview of all of them, Rescue Ace, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it's an archetype of fire warriors and machines whose defense equal their attack, meaning you can randomly use support from the Infernoble Knights and support for the Gizmek cards in the deck. However, after spending a little bit of time building the deck just to see what they do, I'm not sure you would play either. Like, I legitimately just don't think you would play like Infernoble support or the Gizmek stuff in this deck. I think you just
Right. I
play
mean,
them.
if you read the cards, you I don't think anyone who read the cards would think, "Oh, you should play these with these other cards." It very much feels like a deck that almost like I mean, another deck that came in a set like this was Eldritch, right? It's
Yeah.
not supposed to use the extra deck or anything like that. It's just based around their monsters and their like spell and trap cards.
You say that if you read them you would think nobody would think about incorporating those two things. Literally every single deck list or video that I saw when I was researching them said to use both of those things. And
Really.
I don't know why you would. There's just such little there's like such little actual synergy between, you know what I mean? It's like they don't like actually help you. It's like, yeah, Renaud can add them back from the graveyard. And it's like, that doesn't matter. Like, they're
For
not
what?
ever,
To
yeah,
accomplish what?
literally to do what? Like, that's not what they do. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The only real, like, I think, like, selling point of this deck is, or the only, the only like flashy card from this deck, I think, is the big
The
idiot.
boss monster,
Yeah.
yeah. When I first
His
read that card, I was like, "Holy crap! The rest of these cards could be broken." And then I'm
Yeah,
like, "Okay,
and
well, I
then
mean,
they were not. Which I actually had the opposite thought. So the big guy's effect is during your main phase, you can set up to 4 Rescue Ace quick play spells / normal traps with different names from your deck. And the first thought I had after reading that was, my God, every spell and trap for this archetype must be unplayable if they're letting you set 4 of them. And like, they're not entirely unplayable. They're just like not great to the point that like this guy setting 4 of them directly from your like all 4 of them together is probably the equivalent like power level wise of like a Solik, to be honest.
And
Like
I do want to point out that they do get another trap card that is actually very good.
yes,
Uh,
in
I mean,
Cyber Access, yes. So until that
yes.
comes out, this deck actually just seems even less appealing. And
Mhm.
that really
I think that's something we talked
like
about a lot, especially when we
yeah.
talked about like the live twins. Like whenever something like this comes out, and I see in the future a card that makes the deck better comes out, it makes me not even want to touch the deck. It makes me feel like I'm just playing an incomplete deck, and that's a huge problem. I think not only for me but for Ryan. And if it's for me and Ryan, other people out there have to feel the same
Yeah.
way.
I think it's like sometimes I think about how like whenever like whenever a situation like this happens, I think about how I almost said lucky. Maybe that's not the right word. That we were for the release schedule of Secret Forces, where like Necroz's cycle came out before Secret Forces in the TCG, as opposed to in the OCG, Secret Forces was out for like a little while before Necroz cycle and Gungnir came out. So we never had to exist in a world with only 2 Necroz spells. We had we had all 3 as soon as the deck was like actually play. Well, I guess we had to live in a world with Gungnir, Dance Princess cycle and nothing else, for a little while, I guess. But yeah, it's just like I it's just so weird when they make these sets where you get like the whole deck all in one set and then they just
Mm.
give them another support card like instantly, but not actually instantly. It's like 2 sets down the road where it's just all like which I guess to kind of pivot into the other 2 archetypes, I think Pearly also
So
has a new
I think it's
card.
more like instead of like 2 sets, I would say like it's more like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And at
Because
that
for us,
point,
we'll get the next set next month, so it'll be like four
yes.
months from now
Yeah.
we'll get it.
And at that point, it's like it's not like no one talks about these like unless these have like an Eldritch or like Adamancipator or like the more recent one is like even Runic was like barely played, and like Labyrinth has seen no play yet, and it's getting its second support card that will maybe make it see play. It's like it just seems, man, it's just so awkward to like try to play these decks and then they're not good and then you like put them because I feel like the people that would have these decks, this is just going from like an average standpoint, maybe is like this like something like this comes out and you go, oh, this new Labyrinth deck is so cool, and then like you try it and you're like, this wasn't very good, and then you keep it, or you keep it and you're upset you bought it, or maybe you sell it because you're like, this deck wasn't great, and then it gets a new card, and then in this case it got a new card and it was almost playable, and then maybe you try it again. You're like, wow, this was almost playable, but still not great. And then maybe you sell it, and
Oh
then like it
yes,
gets
the
another
live twin
card.
syndrome. You can
Yes,
give them 1,000 cards and it will still not
literally
be that
live.
great. Yeah.
I can't. He literally gave Live Twin a new card for 5 sets in a row, and then it was
Yes, and
barely tier 2. Like it was.
then the only way it was playable was when Sprite cards came out, and then
Yeah,
it was just an engine in Sprite. But who would
yeah.
have thought?
Ugh. It's just like I don't know. It's such a bizarre way to release these, I think. And it's like I do appreciate the fact that they try to design these decks presumably as like complete as possible, and then they give like the ones that don't do well extra cards. But then they also just like don't then they give like Drytron extra cards, and it's like, no, stop, that doesn't need more. Like we didn't need. I think it's crazy. The 3 decks that came out in that set were Drytron, Live Twin, and Magistus, and the deck that got the best card was Drytron.
Yeah.
Like the Drytronic Seas is outrageous. Like I don't understand that. I guess because in Japan nobody played that deck, but
Yeah, I mean they couldn't. I mean
yeah,
you have Maxi in that format, and
yeah.
Drytron was like rarely played. Like it did well sometimes, but and not definitely not as well as it did here.
Yeah, here it was like the best deck or second best deck, depending on like the flavor of the month, I guess. But um the other 2 decks, Mikanko is a really weird. It's like an equip spell ritual deck, which that is why would you make an archetype based around the two worst mechanics in the game? Like just the
Yes.
two just like least good mechanics. Ritual summoning and equip spells. I know they have a couple interesting cards. I'm pretty sure the deck itself is literally just not functional like as like a pure deck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
However,
I
it's
feel
just
like it's more of an
splashable.
engine you
Yeah.
splash
yeah,
into
it's like
something.
an
With Diviner,
Isolde
right?
engine,
Yeah.
right? You can like
Sorry?
Isolde the equip
Yeah, yeah. Well, like,
spells and like it just they're like extenders off Isolde and stuff, which is like sure, but
oh,
that's not
I
like
mean, kinda. More to the fact of like any Herald of Orange just generates like the girl and
uh,
then something else
yeah,
because the girl
Herald of
just searches for things.
Arclight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry,
sure.
Herald of Arclight. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And like
So it's like any deck like the Jeff Funny Money deck that just makes Herald of Arclight or like obviously Divine dumping it. It's just like
mhm.
another engine. You'll see like a lot of Japan combo videos where like oh they're able to make
Yeah, like
Arclight for fun and it's just searching this now and it's just
yeah, because like
generating a free body.
not only is it generate a free body, so like when you use Diviner and send Herald and search that,
Mhm.
you can then summon it from your hand, and then you have 2 level 6s, so you can make
You
Beatrice.
make whatever you
Mhm.
want, yeah.
Even
But
better.
more so just like in engine, it's just like no other card gives you like that free card off just like orange. Obviously, you have to ditch a card to search the other one, but like
Right.
it's kind of irrelevant if you're just playing, right? So I think you'll see more like of the base decks. It's probably like why Firex just like had to be banned. It's like any deck that can make orange light now just like gets to splash this engine as well. Could literally just have like 50 different cards. You don't want to summon your Mekanko card, you can add illusion and then souls and then draw two or something dumb. But
I forgot Souls
so many
existed.
funny
I'll be
options.
honest with
Yeah,
you.
it's been a while.
It is that card is so outrageous that it's just like just
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't quite fit in most of these decks.
Unplayable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but so without going into like crazy specifics on all of them, Jeff, why did you feel compelled to say the Pirelli card's kind of nice? And I don't even remember if you said that before we started recording or not. So
Wait, I said it. I did. I said it before we started
we did say before we started
recording.
recording. I just remember that you said the Pirelli card's kind of nice, and I just kind of ignored you.
So
Just
when you look
moved
at
on.
them, thinking about like which of them is the most functional deck inside themselves, it's definitely Pearly.
Is it definitely really? I
Well,
thought it was
yeah,
the Rescue Aces kind of like
no,
I didn't think Rescue Ace was a good deck, but I thought it was functional in that I thought that
um,
like the design was coherent.
so
But
there was like a 300, I think it was 300, I might be wrong, person OCG tournament like this last week or weekend,
mhm.
and Pearly got like 11th place. So it
Yeah.
and yo, okay, 11th place when you think about like what decks could be like in the top 16 of a
Well, they have
32.
every card banned ever, right? Like more like right now, like that's what their
Yeah,
format is. But people are still playing Three Elements, so sure, whatever. I
yeah.
guess.
Um, but like each of their cards basically function by themselves, which is what you want to like look at. Like all of
Yes.
them revolve around like summoning a Pearly from deck, and then you get to summon an Xyz monster, and then you get to like they also like have recursion where you get to like add their cards back. So it has all of the things that usually you look for in a good deck, like plays with like one card, self recursion. The only thing it lacks is like super powerful, like extra deck monsters. Their extra deck monsters are just fine.
Yeah.
Um, this is a deck that I can see like if they get like a super crazy extra deck monster, um, kind of like how like Exo Sisters did. I
To be
could definitely see
fair, all of
the Pearly
these
deck.
like deck building sets, most of these, almost all of them actually, have gotten extra deck monsters, and
Yes.
more times than not, they have been crazy. So you
So
might
I'm
just
going
be
to guess that if Pearly gets a new extra deck monster, so in the Cyberstorm Access, they have there's like a white Pearly, and the Cyberstorm Access there's a black Pearly, and I'm going to guess that one of the if they make a new extra deck monster one, it's going to be like both of them on the same card, kind of like they do with the
oh
Exo Sisters, right? So
yeah,
it's going to be like
and
both
live
of
twins
them, yeah, and live twins together or whatever.
and
Yeah. So since there's two.
Magistus.
Yep. So I think it's going to be a combination Pearly duo, black white Pearly card or whatever, and it'll probably be broken.
They really love doing that. I've noticed recently, especially with these deck building set. Like they've been so like the
And
live
even like
twin, like, oh man,
the Mykonos or whatever, like there's two of
Mm.
them as well.
yeah.
They're,
I
like
mean,
doing
like
like
they
these
love
duos.
making two cards and then putting them together on the same card and being like, "Look at this brand new card." It's like that's just Michaelis and the other one like playing the three-legged race. Like I, like that's not a new card. Like I don't know what's going on here. Anyways, and then Bowden mentioned the reprints a little bit, and I will say that like the first time I saw even as recently as like 2 days ago, I've literally saw some websites have incorrect information about what cards were in this set. Like I saw some websites saying that Hidden Armory was the 15th collector's rare because for literally until today, I don't think we actually had confirmation of all 15. We only knew 14 somehow. But it is not Hidden Armory. It is two Rescue Aces, five Pearly collector rares, which at first I thought was unprecedented, and then I remembered that actually Live Twin also had five because Live Twin had both of them in the little ones, both of the Link twos, and then the one that was both of them on the same card.
Yes. Okay. So while we're talking about that, I want to
Yeah.
say this before I forget.
Hmm.
This is another reason why I think maybe Pearly is going to get like a really really strong extra deck monster like that, simply because they gave Pearly all of these
Yeah, they gave
collector's
them
rares, and a lot of them
five.
are
Yeah.
high rarity. Like the Pearly himself is like an ultra rare, which makes me think that once the new set comes out, and the Black Pearly comes out, that card will be like a Starlight rare, kind of like they did with the Live
Sure.
Twins.
And they do that's just so Exorcist because they've
Yes,
chosen one from
Exorcisor as well.
every they've chosen one from every so Live Twins had five collector's rares and then they got three Starlights, right? And then
Yeah.
Exosister had three collector's rares. That was a set where they didn't deviate. They gave every archetype three. And then they've gotten two Starlights so far. They got Martha Starlight and Magnifica Starlight.
Hmm.
And then Labyrinth had four collector's rares in their set, and then they got a Starlight in their first support card. And it's
Yes.
definitely possible that the Photon Hypernova Labyrinth card could be Starlight. I doubt it because it's a trap card and not a monster, and I feel like they wouldn't do that. But they could. Like they could just say whatever, just do it. So yeah, that would make sense if that's like they've chosen one of these
Feel
most
like they see
recently.
ahead, like, oh, like Pearly will, like, a really strong Pearly card's gonna come out. We know this. Let's make these high
Let's make
rarity or
them.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty
So
reasonable. I think the only one of these sets in recent memory that didn't happen was Ancient Guardians, and because the Sulfa Chords they got
yes.
a million collector's rares, and then their link just wasn't a Starlight, and like sure, and there's actually a new link in Cyberstorm Access, I think for Sulfa Chord. Maybe that one will be a Starlight, just to keep with trends. But so as far as the reprint collector's rares go, so this is where most of these deck building sets, unless you have an Enchantress slash right tier engine, most of like the real value I think of these sets are generally going to be in this collector's rare reprints. Tactical Masters, a very odd outlier that I'll talk about very briefly, but Infernoble Knight Renaud, which should have just been a collector's rare in Toon Chaos, so good. I think that's fine. Like I always like when they kind of correct the errors like that, where like this card is actually is significantly more playable even than the Gearfried, which Gearfried was collector's rare in Toon Chaos, and this card was not. And I feel like maybe that should have been the other way around. But one for one, I guess. Card Trooper, I guess. Gizmek Orochi, I guess, and then is sold. I sure like that one's probably a little bit more reasonable. And then Bowden mentioned before we started that like you see the Ancient Guardians cards, and it's like Pancratops is like $100, maybe a little bit more, and then we've seen all the other ones like traded like go down, like Skullmeister go down. It's just like what is the market for these cards truly like? Because I was looking at
Yeah,
Tactical Masters, CR
like
Scapegoat
who is
is like
behind?
$15.
That's
Yes.
crazy.
Like, how much is this card trooper
The
gonna
collector
be?
rare, what do you call it? Collector rare Cosmic Cyclone as well is just like a like dirt comparatively. It's
Yeah,
like there's just higher rarities like you don't have to keep. I understand why they're doing it. You're putting like higher rarity cards in circulation where like the other rarities are just like more likely to get damaged or like they're already damaged or yellowing from like old ultis. But it's like, what didn't possess someone to just make an Allure of Darkness collector
Yes,
rare
I've
for no
literally been
reason?
saying that. I've been saying Allure of Darkness for like 5 sets now. I've just been like, Allure of Darkness, please. Like, I know, like, we don't, sometimes I talk about like making cards high rarity that are already high rarity. I think that's like, I have a problem when they make a card that's high rarity that has been high rarity like recently,
Recently,
you know?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, in their defense, none of these cards have a high rarity printing, which I think is like a step in the right direction. I honestly think I prefer this, which is Renaud 1-for-1 Card Trooper, Isolde, Gizmek. I
Well,
like
I mean,
prefer this to
outside of card,
Tactical
there are cards
Masters.
in this set that are just better than Card Trooper to
Right,
make
yeah. Like
high rarity, like machine
I
duplication and pre-preparation
limited
arrays.
removal. Maybe. Okay, you gotta admit, CR limit removal would have hit. Like that would have been kind of nice. But yeah, I agree with
I
you.
wouldn't have been opposed to it.
I think, especially if they do CR Card Trooper, I don't know how they missed Machine Dupe. Like that seems like a no brainer to have those in the same set. But whatever. Prep, I agree with you. Prep is weird. I thought for sure Prep would be like when we knew all of them except for one. I thought Prep was for sure going to be it, and apparently it was just nothing. Apparently it was just a 5th Pirelli card. And then I saw Rhoda, and I was like, did we really need like the 19th Rhoda reprint? And I was like, what if they make? And then I was like, what if they make Rhoda CR again? And then I was like,
That
hopefully they wouldn't do that. Like hopefully they
Alt
would.
collector.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they make Rhoda, and it's like the baseball OCG one.
Oh man.
Oh, that would have
That'd be
hit though.
awesome.
That would have been insane. Yeah, but yeah, like I don't know. Some of these are like Gizmek is only in this set because it, like air quotes has synergy with Rescue Ace. It does not. Please do not put a Gizmek in your Rescue Ace deck. Like
It's
that
a
doesn't.
machine monster.
Yeah, like don't do that. Is sold. I think that one is one that's like that's cool. That card's getting a collector's rare, and then I think about it more, and I'm like, that card should probably just be banned. Like that card probably shouldn't. Like that card probably just shouldn't be legal. Like let it. It's gonna be really obnoxious when the Satellar Knight cards come out. Probably, like. But in the Satellar Knight combos, maybe you make a sold and summon the Mikonkos as like part of your combo.
Mhm.
So like, great. Now those can all be collector's rare. Like, good, sure. The rest is just like I don't think there's a market for like all the format cards like 1-for-1 and Card Trooper, especially because Card Trooper and 1-for-1 are limited in like almost every format they're good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Card Trooper's at 3 in like some, but it's like in all of the like random like synchro era formats, like these cards are just limited, and it's like how many of these are people actually going to buy? Like if collector's rare Cosmic Cyclone is like $35, collector's rare Card Trooper literally has to be like $12, which is
Mhm.
disgusting. Which is just like disgusting to
Well,
think about.
on
But
the other end of the spectrum, there, I think if no one buys / opens the set, which is also equally as
yes,
likely,
that is. I also
you
thought
might
about
see
that.
the demand but like what demand? You know what I mean? So it's not a tournament.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's weird. It's very
It
weird.
is really
But
weird. I think of the cards in here, I guess is sold and 1-for-1 have the highest chance of being expensive. I guess. Unless they do just come out with like a broken Pirelli card eventually. Like I kept hoping they would for Live Twins. But even then, like, I don't know. It's just such a bizarre, like, which I guess I don't want to harp on the specifics of this set too much, because I think one of the reasons why we're talking about this set in this context is that like from a competitive standpoint in the current metagame, you cannot put any cards in this set in your deck and hope to win just based on the nature of the game right now. So I do
Yes.
kind of want to like shift to that a little bit, unless there are any other like pressing issues you guys have about this set or these cards in general.
No. Well, by all means, let's move on.
Okay, yeah. Which I guess like so right now we are pretty firmly in the like tier 0 format. Like
Right.
tier element has won like the last 6 events, and it's been a tournament mirror in the finals like 4 of the last 6 events, like maybe or like 3 of the last 6, and then Flunder's gotten second like 3 times, and then no other deck has been in the finals. It's like it's just not even close. And then Top Cut is like 20 or more. The percentage has actually been trending downward a little bit, but it did kind of like level out. Like I think the very first event with Pasadena, it was at its highest, and then it has kind of like leveled out. However, the decks that are not tier element like are not going as deep in Top Cut as they were before. Generally.
Well, what do you consider like? Because I think we've still seen Flunderies like make the finals enough
Yes,
of the
but I'm
time.
saying like top 8 was like 7 tier element, 1 Flunder, like as
Oh, sure,
opposed to
sure.
like
I know what
4 tier, 1 Sprite, 1 Flunder, 1 Runic.
Whatever. Yeah.
Now it's literally just been like 7 tier element, like 1. You know what I mean?
well,
It's
I
like
think what happens when like it's more defined as well. So obviously you had a lot of people who were like, "Oh, well, we can't play the mill effects, right?" That was like a big one. And then like that European tournament, I think a lot of people just didn't play a Guido, and some of them barely played Kelbeck, and they had more Bestials, and that's why you probably saw like the representation for the Dortmund YCS, which was just like one Draco Slayer deck, like one Naturia Runic deck. You know what I mean? Like all
yeah,
of those
yeah.
like outliers into like a top 64 cut. But then you look at what was the one that Jesse won after? Was that a Columbia? I don't remember. But I think the breakdown was like a lot more in favor of a Shizu tier because everyone was just like, oh, well, like, why wouldn't you like activate a Guido? Jesse Cotton does
Yeah.
it. He won the event. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
I
cool.
agree.
And then like
I
you just
agree.
like you destroy the rogue decks. I think that's like the biggest skew that I've noticed is like more people willing to mill game one, the more chance your opponent's not playing tier, and the game becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. I think it's also
Yeah.
like I think it was one of those things where people like tricked themselves. They
Mm.
they leveled themselves, right? They were like, well, if I'm not going to play a Guido because if I mill them, like and they're playing tier, like that's bad for me. And then it's like, well, realistically, like it's your turn. Like you have a lot more agency
Yeah.
over how these effects are resolving. Like, yeah, obviously milling them 5 isn't like fantastic comparatively to the other decks where it just destroys them, but like it is still your turn. You are still probably favored. When these things are happening. And if you don't mill your opponent might just have a Havness or something and mill themselves anyway. So
Mhm.
like that's always the thing. But it's like now in hindsight, we've seen Jesse just play the same deck, 4 events in a row and just get like second and first twice. It's like he was probably right.
Yeah.
He was probably right in the fact that he was just milling everybody at all times and just playing better than them and winning. Like great.
I
Like,
definitely value like
like
being a better like
yeah,
this is the funny
exactly.
thing, right? This is when we throw back to like how like formats are just there's like good formats in the sense that everyone gets to play, but like in current Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like, oh, everyone gets to play, but it's more like you only get to play because your deck will play Shifter, right? Or like some form of floodgates and stuff like that. And then you have like obviously like the other sort of like decks that just exist that are just so much better. And it's like, well, you're not really playing. And then you have formats like Nat's format where I think it was kind of balanced, but obviously like not to the same extent. We obviously still had Mystic Mind rivalry and like anti spell, in the fray, which is equally as annoying. But like just at the core of it, I think this format is so oppressive to everything else. It just doesn't matter. I don't know where I was going with that whole
Yeah, well,
tangent, but
I
yeah,
think I know
like
what you mean.
more so
So
like I think like Ishizu is so much better than everything else that it is not fun from a gameplay perspective for everyone, right?
Right.
Unless
And
you're at the tippy top.
on that topic, I want to mention because we briefly talked about OCG. People are still playing Tier Element. It is not Tier Element itself that is good. It's the fact that the Ishizu cards they have are so
yes.
powerful, and
Yeah.
when against other decks, if you're not playing Ishizu, that means that your deck is getting milled 10 cards. You're losing a shit ton of your deck, which makes your deck non-functional, and then also they get to just take away cards from your graveyard that let you play as well. So that's what happens when you see, like, if you go look at OCG right now, when you see look at all these cards, they just have the Ishizu cards in them with a small amount of the tier limit cards, and when your opponent gets milled for 10 or 15 cards or whatever over the course of their turns, and then they also get their graveyard messed up, and they're not playing those cards, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. It really throws the whole dimension out of whack. It's like you have to play all of these cards to counter that one specific thing. It's very oppressive. Like
So
what format do you think is like not like okay, it's really difficult to me to look back at Yu-Gi-Oh in the last like maybe 3 or 4. I'm trying to think, maybe like 20.
I think I know
Actually,
exactly what
we
you're
have to go
gonna
deep.
ask, and I'm going to predict your question and answer it. So,
Okay, go for
um,
it.
what this
Answer it
reminds
now.
me, yeah, so what this reminds me of, almost identically, and it's very funny because what made me think of this is a couple of days ago, I got my like Facebook memory of YSS Melbourne was 5 years ago, and I went, "Oh my god, I'm so old and I'm going to perish." And then
Yes.
somebody, I want to say it was like Avery, made a status that was like, Ryan is just doing insane. Like everybody says that this format sucks, and then we see like Ryan among a few other people put up very very consistent results, and it's like this format is very skillful. Like the people that are saying it's bad, which I think it's right now, people are saying this format's bad. I think they're just not putting in the work to learn it,
Hmm.
right? Which we see happen a lot. And then Jeff commented, as skillful as it may be, I just don't think it's very fun. And
Yeah,
I
that
think
that's
you
the
were
biggest one.
right. I think, like at a certain point, right? Like obviously like when you like I think there can be some enjoyment derived of like playing at the highest level and whatever. And like I'm sure like Jesse's probably having fun when he's, playing in the finals of 4 events, out of 5. And it's like, but like just for the average player, it probably just isn't
Well,
fun.
not even for the average player. So this is what I'm going to say,
Hmm.
because we see plenty of like social media posts where people are like, "Oh, it's so skillful. I love how skillful it is,
Yeah.
and it's so fun." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I
And then
mean,
a week
I don't
later,
think
they're like, I didn't mill right and I lost. And you're like, hmm.
okay,
you
yeah."
know?
Also, I think it is for me, Yu-Gi-Oh. If for me to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh, the best part of Yu-Gi-Oh for me is building decks and trying
Yes.
out cool stuff. And I think in formats like this, or formats like your format with the what's it called deck, the spiral deck, if you what's the point of even going to locals?
Oh yeah, I didn't go to locals that format. I don't go to locals
What
right now.
I haven't
I
been
agree
I
with
haven't
you.
been to locals in months,
Yeah, I
in
agree.
months. Max hasn't either. When Max goes, he goes in cubes. What is the point? And our
Yeah.
locals are at an all-time low. We used to get 40 people on Wednesdays and Fridays. Now it's like 20. Sometimes it's 15. And you cannot tell me that it is fun to just play these maybe in like a big tournament setting you might have a good time, but if you can't go to locals, if you like how do I put this, if I ask you, are you going to go to locals and play this deck, if you tell me no, I don't think that it's fun. And I guarantee that most people who are listening to this, you're not going to tell me you're going to locals playing your tier limit deck every week like you normally would or whatever. There's no way. I don't believe you if you
Interesting.
say that.
I think that's an interesting assessment. So like I think that like not obviously like not everybody, I guess like the way that we probably treat locals is probably different than how a lot of people treat it. Like I generally go to locals at the beginning of a format when a new deck comes out just to like go through the motions. So
Right.
like
Absolutely. Yep.
maybe when Hypernova comes out, I'll go to locals the first like week or two just to be like, I'm gonna put some Kashira cards in my deck and see what happens. Just so I have like some exposure to these decks before I play it in a big tournament setting, because like it's still a tournament setting. It's still, like timed rounds with, like people who, like following like the procedure. Obviously, there's far much more like leniency, and I think it's better to like learn cards in that environment than it is to learn them at like, round 7 of a YCS. Like that's not hot. But
Right.
yeah, like I if I want to play like a tier element, like if I so you're right. If I go to locals, it is not fun to just steamroll the people that don't have tier element decks like at locals. Like I gain nothing and they gain nothing. And then if I want to like test tier element mirrors, I wouldn't go to locals to do that. I would just like
Yeah.
ask somebody to play with me, right?
Yes.
Like that's like kind of where we are. So yeah, I guess I do see what you're saying. I never really thought of it quite like that. I don't even think I played. I don't think I played locals with Spiral either, honestly. Which I'm trying to remember, but I just don't. There just wasn't really a point. Which, because yeah, there's just like, hmm. I don't think I have anything to add to that one. I think you just kind of hit it on the head there.
Yeah.
Let me check my
I mean,
notes, see if I have anything else on this topic. Um, One second. Okay, so I guess the other thing, when you were talking about deck building, I think there is still some like deck building innovation to be had at the beginning of these formats. However, I think now it's kind of all come full circle, and it's like there are like two or three ways to build the Ishizu tier deck. It's like you can play it with no Bistrels, and you can play it with more of the utility cards, right? You can play it with like maybe there's only two ways. Maybe the only two ways are like you play it with no Bistrels and you play it with the utility cards, or you play it with a bunch of Bistrels, to kind of target the mirror. And then
uh huh.
because you're playing so many Bistrels, you just kind of default back to what Bowden was talking about, where you're just milling no matter what, because you draw Magnuma and you go, I'm going to mill my opponent. Because if they're playing tier element, this is literally fine, right? Like, like that's just kind of what happens, right? So then the only real issue is just like, okay, which of these two am I gonna play for this event? And like maybe when Hybernova comes out, there's some subtle adjustments you can make, because then there's another bistro monster. There's presumably one more deck added to the format that is even remotely playable.
Right.
Like if there's no ban list, tier elements will almost certainly be a better deck than Kashtira. However, Kashtira will
It'll
probably,
it'll be like Flunder, right? It's just another
yeah,
deck that has Dimension Shifter and it can lock them out of the game. And so,
yeah.
I mean,
It's just like another deck that exists. So then it's another deck that maybe you can't have Bistals against, right? And then but you get a new card. You get the Kashira Tier Element card, right? So your deck even gets better. And I was thinking about what the representation of Kashira might be, and I'm thinking, is anyone who's been playing Tier Element, like anybody who has been playing Tier Element, are they going to just get two copies of Tier Element Kashira, put them in their deck, and be like, this is my deck now? Or are they going to get an entire Kashira deck? And I really
if
just
you've been
feel like
dedicating time to the Tearlament deck, I don't think there's any world where you're switching. And
exactly, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and I'm like, yeah, like why would you switch, right? Like yeah, like if you've been grinding the Tier Element deck, literally, why would you switch? So one thing I think that's like interesting to note is there is a remote YCS. Okay. It might not even be, it might be next weekend. I think it's this weekend though. I'm pretty sure there's a remote YCS this weekend. And then we have our first, like 3 week lull of event. So if there is going to be a ban list before Vegas, it like has to be next week, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like there couldn't be one after Australia because there was
it's
this
too
remote
soon.
YCS, right? Because like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
2 weeks later there's going to be remote YCS. It's like, okay, well now we have a 3 week gap, and then we're going to get Photon Hypernova, and then we're going to have three events in a row. It's going to be Mexico, France, and Vegas all in a row. So if there's going to be a list, it has to be next week. And then if there isn't a list, then I guess we have a bit of a buffer of when there could be, then we could maybe see a list after Vegas, but before the 250th, which I feel like almost 100% there has to be a list before the 250th. Like that, I think it would
Right.
be crazy if there was no list before that, right? Like that would be insane. But
I mean, everyone that I speak to and everyone that we know seems to think that there's no way in hell we're going to get a list before Las Vegas. And I just feel like that is such a bad idea. Like from like a publicity standpoint, you're going to stream like one of the most important and like coveted events of the year, and you're just going to show the same stuff that's been going on. Not only are you showing it every round, you're showing three people, like
Three of them
six
every
people.
round.
Yeah, yeah. So you're going to see even more of it on stream, right? And
Yeah.
I think that is so. I really think that like if I was on like the R&D team and had anything, I would be pushing for a list before that because I think it looks so bad for like 8 events to be just smashed by tier limits and such an important event
It's it's
to
funny though how
also.
polarizing the feature matches can be though, because I had there were people who were singing the praises of like Jesse and Hani's final match from Pasadena. They're like, "Oh, this is like peak gameplay," and I was talking to them. I'm like, "Did you actually know what was going on?" They're like, "No," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Okay." And then
yes.
you have like the really low end player of like they try to follow along, but like you're not playing a Shizu tier, so you're not understanding any of the intricacies, and then you're really just like sitting there and watching because it's Jesse or someone. Like I guess
Yeah.
that's fine as well, but like I don't know, man. Like it doesn't. It's not like riveting, you know. It's not something I'm actively trying to watch because I just figure it's just like uh, it's the same reason you don't want to go to locals, right? Why would you watch it if you don't want to play with it? But
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing.
I
So,
mean, what was the last streamed event?
Dortmund.
And then what was the last streamed American event?
That was
Pasadena.
Pasadena. Yeah.
Pasadena. And it was Pasadena then, where you could just tell from like the commentators like how unenthusiastic they were seeing like having to like keep saying the same things over and over again. Like, oh, here's like mill 5 cards, and like here's like chain link 7 again,
Mm-hmm.
and putting that again on stream. I refuse to believe that they think that is an acceptable thing, especially when you're like, can you imagine like having like the I can't remember if they haven't like ever show like all three at once. I can't remember if they do that, but just like all three people on one team like just milling like
Ready,
10
everyone?
cards at the time, and then
All three players mill 5 like simultaneously. Just 15 cards fly off the table. It's just
and
like, okay.
it's just I people are like, oh yeah, it's like really skillful, but I don't think it makes it's fun to watch. I
Yes.
think Yu-Gi-Oh gets so when it comes to like I think Pokemon and Magic are boring as shit to watch. I think they are not good spectator card games. Yu-Gi-Oh, because it's so fast and anything can happen at any
Literally
time
anything
to
can happen
change
at any
the pace of
point.
the game
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
off of one card, that it makes it way more exciting. And what's not exciting is seeing both players mill 20 cards and there's chain link 7 every game.
And like you
And
can't really tell what's going on because you can't hear them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really hear them declaring their chain link, so like we're not really sure what's happening. Yeah.
um I am going to, I last time I think I said that they'd have like a ban list around my birthday, right? Which would be next week.
Sure.
That's because didn't we say that we were going to bet what the next one would
Yeah,
be?
and then they had one in December that did nothing instead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was no one had that one on their bingo card. Nobody had a ban list in December that bans Curious and nothing else.
So
Like sure, like I guess that's fine.
So funny.
so I think there might be one like the first week of February, and we might go
Yeah,
into like
I
Mexico
would hope
with a new
so.
set and a new list.
I think that would be like literally ideal. Speaking of Mexico, I guess randomly, somehow the three of us are playing.
By the
which
grace of God,
which
yes.
I say somehow, and I'm sure anybody listening is like, well, you guys have just been doing a podcast for like 3 months. Like, of course you're going to team together. We're not teaming together for Vegas, so I don't really know how this came about. But yeah, we're going to be teaming at Mexico. So I
Shout
don't
out
even
to
know if
Nishad.
we've,
Yeah.
yeah, literally shout out to Nishad for staying home, I guess. But anyways, just figured I would mention that. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, I guess, at this point. But it'll matter when we have a post Mexico podcast where we're either very happy we did well or very upset that we didn't, and we'll probably have
And
more.
normally two of us are mad at the third for
Yes,
doing very
when
poorly,
I just
losing.
don't win a match, it'll be great. Oh my god. When I play my rescue ace deck and set 4 traps and
Yes.
still lose. And we're like, I
That's
set
one
4. What do you
well.
want from me? Yeah.
Oh my god.
But yeah, I hear everything you're saying, and it's like there are definitely some aspects that I hadn't really like considered about this, I guess. Because like we've played the game at like every skill level presumably. Like I've played the game when I was terrible when I first started out, and I like remember the things I like thought were cool to watch and what I didn't, and like
Mhm.
I just can't imagine being like a newer player and watching it and just have any idea what's going on. And I
I
do
don't even think it
think
has to be a newer player. I think it has to be just someone who
just an
just likes to
average
go to
player.
locals,
Sure. So,
doesn't care about really YCS, or doesn't travel that much.
yeah.
And I would be very upset if I couldn't do the one thing I liked, and that's go to locals. Because I had those people. I have people that just like to go to locals and play
Mhm.
some Yu-Gi-Oh and hang out with their friends. They don't really care about going to YCSs or
Yeah.
anything like that. And it's not great for those people.
Yeah. Like I think like it's important I do think it's important for formats like this to exist sometimes. I don't think it can be like this every single time, right? Obviously. And I don't think we can have like a nationals format like we had this year every single time, which is, like 97 decks that are all degenerate. Like I
Right.
think I think both of those I think both ends of that spectrum should exist on occasion, but should not exist for nearly as long as both of them did at the same time. And right now it's like the other thing, not that this has ever mattered, because they've reprinted these cards and just banned them instantly so many times. But it's like they've said there's a tier element ultimate rare in the new OTS pack.
That is true. I did forget
But
about that
granted, they've
actually.
just done that and banned them instantly a million times in the past already. So that likely just doesn't matter, you know. But
It'd be crazy if like it was Kit
and then
Kalos
they just ban
and
it.
they
Yeah,
ban it.
that would actually be insane if they like I don't know. But so and the way that it like the way that product page was framed, and again, I really highly doubt specifically the person writing these product pages is like also specifically the same person who's like necessarily developing these ban lists, but like the product page said each ultimate, like represents like like a key theme of like this dueling season, and it was like tier element, sprite, and Kashira, and it's like, do they expect all three of these decks to remain at like reasonably viable power levels until Nats? And they want to have this like Sprite versus Kashira versus Tier Element like triangle format. It's like, well, Tier Element's gonna win. Like, I'll tell you that right now. Like, we don't need to wait. Like that deck will the Tier Element will smash the other two decks if nothing
Mhm.
changes. As it has been absolutely Sprite Tier Element is the Sprite Smashers. Like that is like that like it is this the trend nothing's gonna change. Tier Element's
Yeah.
getting more cards, Sprite is not, like I don't know. It's just like ugh. that- I think like the next couple weeks are probably gonna be like the crucial turning point of like, is Hypernova going to have any exclusives that shake up the game like Garura did? I also think about how much worse Trellman would be if Garura didn't exist, and how I cannot believe that card got printed in the set
Yeah.
it did. I actually just can't believe it, because we were talking about like OCG a little bit also. It's like I look at the OCG decks, they don't have Garura and Kikalos' banned, and they're still trying to play this deck. Two tier element monsters cannot make a fusion anymore in Japan. Like there
Right.
just isn't one you can make. I just think it's so crazy. But yeah, if we get like a Garura tier card in Frozen Hypernova, like how much is that really, how much is that gonna change? Um and then if we don't, is Kashira going to flop, I guess I'll say, the same way it kind of did in Japan, where right at the beginning of the format, some people tried it out, and then it just people just kind of dialed in on the cards that are really good against it, and then it just couldn't compete anymore, right? And just like, if they're hoping that a new set, I guess maybe in their eyes, two new sets, Amazing Defenders and Photon Hypernova, to shake up the game, I really just don't think that's what's going to happen. I really just think these cards are not as good as the cards that exist currently. But I don't know if you guys, and I think you guys agree based on what we've been talking about. Based on everything said, I think we're kind of on the same page as this. But
I mean, yeah, I mean, if
I
something happens, I think
100% agree.
I think the Tier Limit deck, which is already the best deck, just gets better.
yeah. So
Um,
I guess for like our last type of thing, because we've talked about this in the past, and I'll be honest, it might have been in more detail in the episode we never published. So I don't actually know if we've talked about it like in canon. What changes you think you would want to have on the list to create like the most ideal environment? Which
so
now
originally,
we've
I think,
seen Japan ban everything and it still isn't
yeah,
enough. Well, they also banned every other deck too. So if
yes.
they did the hits they did here and didn't hit any other deck, obviously Charlotte would not be playable. But when they
So
ban every deck, it's whatever.
so I think that when we talked about that, I feel pretty confident that we all agreed that if they banned Kitkalos, what does the deck do?
Like what advantages
And
does it actually have versus other decks?
right. And then we saw Kick Close and all these other things happen to it, and it's still playable in the OCG. The one other thing that we talked about though is that we thought Kick Close should be banned and all of the um Ishizu cards should go to 1. And I think if all these Ishizu cards go to 1 and Kick Close gets banned, I think that brings in line tier elements pretty hard and but still makes them playable. I don't think, but I definitely don't think if you were to like put them up against like Flunderies, Sprite, and Kashtira, that it would be an overwhelming win rate anymore, like it is now.
Yeah. I can see that. Especially with Garura, then you can kind of just play like maybe you would play like you maybe just
Someone
like
like
pivot
Fusion,
back
Link Deck.
to like more Mistrals. Like maybe you pivot back into also playing like Lubellion, right? And then you just make Garura and like summon Magnamut. Like that's your combo, And then you play like Beatrice, and like that's how you access like more of your fusions. And then you play like like a Kaleido Heart like control deck type thing, which I think would be like reasonable. And then I also think something a lot of people like don't consider is when a deck gets worse, like right now, Tier is the best deck and it's winning by a wide margin when everyone is targeting it as the best deck. If it gets hit, right? Like if Kit Kalos gets banned, there will be a drop in play of like the anti tier element cards in the main, at least. Like I think if Kit Kalos gets banned, it's very unlikely my Sprite deck would be maining Magnamut anymore, right? Like that just seems much less likely.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, you can get away with a little bit more because now it's like, well, I don't have Kit Kalos, but it's like, now I'm not fighting through 9 Bistals in the main deck, you know? And then if you do play against that guy that has 12 Bistals in their main deck, then they're going to lose to the Kashira opponent they're probably going to play against the next 5 rounds. So, and then I think it's also unlikely they just hit tier. I think they've been pretty good about hitting the best deck and then also taking some steps to prevent the obvious next best deck from just being just as dominant. So
Japan did that. I think they went a little overboard
Japan
on
killed
some of it.
Japan killed
Yeah.
like the 8th best deck. Japan did not they did not care. They were like, brand fusion? Nah.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think a
too.
card that we can guarantee see on the next list is Wind Barrier Statue, right?
I hope so. It is now like I think Wind Barrier Statue is gonna have the same fate as like Fiber, where it's like it got banned in Japan, then it got banned in Master Duel, then it got banned in the TCG. And I don't really like using Master Duel as like a litmus, but I think it got banned in Japan as well, right? Like
Yeah.
Barrier Statue got banned in Japan, it got banned in Master Duel, and I would hope it gets banned. And if you ban Barrier Statue, I don't think you should hit any other Flunder cards. I don't think there's a need. Maybe Featherstorm.
Okay, I was
Maybe.
just say
But
maybe Featherstorm, but I
as
just
far
don't
as
see
like
them. I would love to see that card go to 1, but it's just something I don't see happening.
yeah, but like as far as the Flunderies like archetypal cards, I don't really see any reason to hit those. And I think we've talked about it vaguely where it's like if they get rid of Barrier Statue and like maybe like limit Featherstorm, it's like that deck is reasonable. Like it's still playable. It has a lot of options,
Yeah.
and it's not like terrible. Like it just now it's based on interaction, not
It's
based
just a
on
control
flooding your
deck that
opponent
gets
out.
back all its resources every
Yeah.
turn, right?
And like Mega Rise is still very good. M Pen is still very good. Apex Avion still very good. Well, less so Apex Avion, I guess, but um, yeah, I still think like that's like a reasonable thing. And then Sprite, I guess you have to hit also. And that one I honestly don't know
I was about to say, I don't know what
what
you would
you would
actually
hit.
do.
Limit Elf, and then it goes from an I think Sprite Kashira is like currently already or like Photon Hypernova. I think post Photon Hypernova, I think Sprite Kashira is like so heavily skewed in Kashira's favor already. And I think if they do something silly like limit Elf, then
Yes.
Kashira Sprite just becomes like a 90-10. It's just like if you go first, you Diabloses their Sprite and or you Diabloses their Elf and they don't have a deck anymore. And
Yeah,
that's actually
I
kind of
think
interesting that like limiting an extra deck card right now would be like banning it going second because it means that Diablosis can always banish it, which is like
that's true.
mildly interesting, but also kind of like more degenerate than anything. it just makes if they just decide they want a deck to have a worse Kastira matchup, they can just limit the extra deck card of that deck
Mhm.
like arbitrarily.
So I think instead of going for like Elf, which I think might one day just be banned,
I agree. Yeah.
um, I think they'll probably if they do something, I think it'll be very small and it'll be limit Sprite Starter to one.
Sure, I can say that as well. I think that's a card that like when it's at one, it means your like combo is the same, but it means you can far less often. Like there are a lot of situations where like you clear their level 2 and then you're like, well, if they don't have starter, they can't do anything, and they go activate
Right.
starter, and you're like, damn. And you're just like, damn it. you know, like that just kind of happens, and it's like, yeah. And then if it's only one starter, also means there's like a lot less recursion for their deck too, right? Because it means they can't just go like
You can't just search it for like
for
next
the
turn
follow
with
up, yeah.
with
And
Jet.
and if you need to use it, you can't search a second one to like set it as like a trap type thing. Like, yeah, I think limiting starter would probably be the most reasonable hit to like a pure Sprite deck where like it doesn't really hit the decks that are using these cards for any other purpose. Like the weird like hybrid decks a lot of time only played one starter anyway because starter
Mhm.
locks you into level 2s. So if you're playing, like a weird like hybrid deck, you just play like one starter to you'd go like at the end of your combo you kind of go like blue jet starter, like you're not relying on starter to start your combos. So I can definitely see that happening. Maybe finally ban Toad. Maybe that's just the hit, right? Just ban Toad. Maybe
Maybe
not. I don't know.
maybe I did think about that, but I feel like they just would have like did it to begin with at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
And I guess you could just like, I mean, do you like ban Toad and like bring back Ronin Toad in at that point,
I
or
was
do you
thinking
just like
about that
keep them
too,
banned?
but I feel like that card. Then you got to ban Substitute again.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah,
then,
that's right.
can you imagine if next list they just go ban Toad, unban Rodent Toad, and ban Substitute again? That would be insane. I think they were very ambitious unbanning Substitute because that actually just means they can never unban Rodent Toad. But whatever. Maybe they thought long and hard about it. But yeah. So I think that like covers mostly everything I wanted to talk about. Um, and I just feel like we've talked about this and like similar variations of this so many times because it is
Yes.
just truly the only thing to discuss as this is going on. But
Yeah, it
um,
really makes it weird, like trying to like without having to like force topics.
yeah.
It just doesn't really. What else do you talk
What
about? I
else
hope
is there to
people
talk
are
about
okay
in
okay with
Yu-Gi-Oh?
that.
Yeah. I mean, next week we can talk about Photon Hypernova regardless. Because that will be like we talked about we forced ourselves talking about amazing defenders this week, which again, like I truly don't know anybody. No one has talked to me about that set. Like no one has brought that up. They're just like, oh yeah, this set's kind of cool. It's like not really. I don't know. Very weird product, but Photon Hypernova we can talk about next week, and kind of have our thoughts on that. Hopefully we'll know the TCG
Rest of the cards,
exclusives
yeah.
soon. But we're in just that weird spot where it's like Amazing Defenders comes out. They need to at least focus on that product for a week before because if tomorrow they just like reveal the Frozen Hypernova cards, like then who's gonna look at Amazing Defenders then? You know?
I
Like
mean, who's looking at it now?
that's that's I guess I didn't think about that. You're right. All right. Well, on that note, we can stop looking at it. I'm gonna close this tab. But yeah, so I truly hope this is the last time we have to talk about tier for 30 minutes and we can just move on to Hypernova and Kashtira. And maybe we can complain about Kashtira for 30 minutes,
Yeah,
in a couple
maybe.
events from now. I have a couple things to complain about for that deck already, but we'll get there when we get there. So yeah, thank you all for listening. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I don't know.
We
Do you have
lost
any-
Bowden.
we did lose Bowden, I think.
We lost Bowden. He had to dip out because of some stuff going on, but
Sure.
he says goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have any closing thoughts, we can do that. Or I guess that's it. I think
I've talked enough about cheer elements
for
enough of
literally
my
10
life.
lifetimes. I guess the
Yeah.
last thing I would say before we go, what is your favorite collector's rare from Amazing Defenders?
Oh, I actually know what it is. I just have to make sure it's Pearly. Oh, My Friend Pearly is my favorite.
My Friend Pearly. That's a
Yeah,
really good name.
because I love the name. I love
My
the name, and
friend
it's a cute
My
card.
Friend Pearly. Oh, it's the continuous spell one.
Yeah.
Okay. My Friend Pearly. Sure. I think mine's probably Renaud.
Renaud. Yeah, I knew that.
I had to pick one of the Noble Knights, obviously, but I think Renaud. I just like that card. And I think it should have been collector's rare in the first place. So this is the one that when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's nice. Like Isolde, I think should be probably just banned. Like I'm just kind of upset that I got a collector's rare. But Renaud, I was like, he deserves it. Like he's put in his time. He's been almost playable. He's been featured in enough ready for dual combo videos that surely he can get something. But yeah. So if anybody has still watched this far and you know what Amazing Defenders is, let us know what your favorite collector's rare is in Amazing Defenders, I guess. We did get a lot of feedback on the last video, on the last one actually, on the recap one. We definitely got more people commenting than we had in the past.
Oh, good.
And hopefully I fixed the audio issues that were with the last one. But I think I have. Last aside, I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna start streaming again. I streamed Master Duel a little bit last week, and I'm probably gonna do some more this week. So, we'll probably have that. Probably gonna have that Twitch in the description. Maybe if you're curious, watch me play Symphonic Warriors on Master Duel and yell a lot. So I think that just about covers everything. So thank you all for watching. And then we will see you guys next week with our presumably Photon Hypernova analysis.